We return yet again to a galaxy far, far away to hunt for the Platinum Trophy in Star Wars Outlaws. Ever since the game's reveal at Ubisoft Forward last year, Outlaws has been one of my most anticipated games of 2024. Coming off the high that was Star Wars Jedi Survivor, it seemed like the future of Star Wars games was looking bright. Despite Outlaws being published by Ubisoft, a company with a, shall we say, turbulent reputation, I have nothing but respect for Massive Entertainment, the studio behind Outlaws, Avatar, and the Division games. Even with the shroud of negativity growing larger leading up to its release, come August 27th, and I did not hesitate to drop $110 for the Gold Edition. And while it's not without its flaws, by the time I wrapped up Kay's journey, I found myself having the most fun with the new release in quite some time. Before we jump into things, I want to go over the structure of this video. If you've seen me cover open world games in the past, you'll know I like to split the trophies up by different sections instead of going over them in the order they were unlocked. I find this helps to keep the video organized as I don't have much of a game plan going into these games. I just tackle the trophies as I see fit. As always, our journey begins with the story, so if you're avoiding spoilers, feel free to skip to the timestamp below. Otherwise, let's jump into hyperspace and start our Outlaws adventure. The game kicks off shortly after the Empire strikes back as Zarek Best's leader, Sliro Barasha, meets with the Pikes, Crimson Dawn, and the Hutts, who are going to be big players during our time in Outlaws. We proceed to step into the shoes of Kay Vess, who longs to get off Canto Bight and see what that big galaxy has to offer. The beginning does get off to a slow start, as one of my first objectives is to acquire credits to fix up my data spike. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but after a small score at Club Tarsus paints a target on our back, Bram fills us in on a big enough score that can get us off this rock. Meeting with the skeptical crew, I break into Sliro's mansion in search of his vault. Sneaking past his many guards, I eventually found it, but instead of credits, we found a person. To Kay, and my surprise, this crew is made up of rebels whose real objective is to rescue someone named Azara. Shot with a stun blast, Kay wakes up to find Sliro, who believes she is responsible for the break-in. It's a mad dash to the hangar where we steal Sliro's ship, and with a death mark on our heads, we make a jump to a random system to avoid the heat. Crash landing on Toshara, we meet a Rodian named Waka who offers to fix our ship. With a blaster, ship, and speeder acquired, this gave me my first trophy for Star Wars Outlaws. Toshara serves as the game's main sandbox, similar to Kobo from Jedi Survivor, and I easily spent my first few hours here just exploring and taking everything in. But we'll dive into those adventures later. During my time here, I met Donka, who gave me an overview of the various factions controlling different parts of the planet. Completing various jobs for these groups eventually led me to a wrecked High Republic ship. Inside this desolate vessel, I found a nav computer for the Trailblazer, soon followed by Waka seeking to claim my death mark. This escalates even further when he is killed by a bounty hunter named Vale. As we make our escape, a commando droid unexpectedly helps us out, buying us time to reach the Trailblazer. With the nav computer secured, we meet Jalen Brax, who's accompanied by the droid that helped us moments before. He heard about our heist on Canto and offered us a job to break into Sliro's mansion again, but this time for a real score. All we need to do now is assemble a crew capable of pulling off the job, which wraps up everything on Toshara. Now, I could have kept going on with the story, but I ran into a really big problem. If you've been following the game, which I'm sure if you're watching this you have, you've most likely heard about the issues that have plagued the game since launch. While I didn't encounter any of the progression blockers Ubisoft mentioned, I did run into a game-breaking bug that wouldn't let me leave the planet. After searching through the limited forums on the issue, I suspect that it stems from a Hutt side mission I completed earlier. I'm not entirely sure how it soft-locked my game, but after reverting to an earlier save and avoiding that mission altogether, I was finally able to leave the planet and tackle the story in any direction I wanted to. From here, I could look for a droid smith on Akiva, a heavy on Tatooine, or a safecracker on Kijimi. I followed ND's advice and headed to Kijimi first, which has an ongoing feud between the Ashiga clan and Crimson Dawn. Gathering intel for someone named Ankh, we find out she's trapped in a factory. In search of its schematics, we find ourselves in the middle of this feud by stealing an Ashiga clan relic from Crimson Dawn. This caught the attention of a familiar face. Crimson Dawn's leader Kira, who is willing to help us free Ankh, in exchange for putting the Ashiga Queen's heir, Krisk, on the throne. With the schematics in hand, we sneak into the weapons factory where we finally find Ankh and help her break out. However, she refused to join our crew until she finished one last job for Kira. Helping them both, our role seems simple enough: break into the Ashiga stronghold and disable their turrets. Things get complicated when Crimson Dawn agents break into a cryo chamber to steal an Orden strand, the Ashiga's genetic code. I retrieved the strand and delivered it to the throne room when I was given a choice: hand it over to Crimson Dawn or return it to the Ashiga clan. To me, it made the most sense to return it to their rightful owners, and with that out of the way, Ankh was along for the ride, wrapping up everything on Kijimi. Next, I headed to Akiva in search of a droidsmith and our old friend, Gadik. We start by gaining some intel from a local gangster named Surat, who points us to an Imperial base. It gets heated very quickly, but I eventually found Gadik, who is hesitant to join at first, but is intrigued by the challenge of the heist. Like Ankh, he has another job that needs to be completed before he can commit. Kay reluctantly has to work with rebels to secure a Viper droid. With Gadik's expertise with everything droids, he rigs the Viper to work for them, securing a droidsmith for our crew. That was all the main quests I could do on Akiva for now, so it was time to head to Tatooine in search of our heavy. The trail led me to Sheriff Quint, who pointed me to a moisture farm, which eventually led me to a Tusken village.
I wish I knew what that meant.
Here, I found Haas, our potential heavy, held captive by the Tuskens. To secure his release, I needed to retrieve a crate pearl that was stolen by bandits. After making short work of them, I handed over the pearl and Haas was freed. There was something about him that felt off though. Returning to Docking Bay 94, Haas was nowhere to be found. A bit of searching led me to the Mos Eisley Cantina, where Haas was gambling away his luck in a game of sabacc. With no money to pay his debts, he sold Nix to the Hutts.
No. What the hell are you doing?
It's yours. Ow!
And that's where our next mission took us. Before diving into this part, I've got to highlight the incredible performance of Kay's voice actor, Humberly Gonzalez.
He is extremely dangerous, Kay.
I said I don't care. Nix is family. You wouldn't get it.
She truly shines during this mission, which also happens to be my favorite in the game as we break into Jabba's palace. I mean, who doesn't want to explore every nook and cranny of this place? We rescue Nix, but during our escape, we catch a glimpse of a certain scruffy looking nerf herder encased in carbonite and come face to face with Jabba the Hutt. Of course, Bail had a hand in this, but Jabba doesn't take kindly to the disruption, sending us all into his Rancor pit. Haas doesn't make it, but Bail and I manage to escape after a boss fight with the Rancor, who eventually opens a way out for us. Unfortunately, our freedom is short-lived as Jabba's men capture us again. However, if we do a job for him, this whole charade will be swept under the rug and we can leave the planet in peace. Meeting Bail outside of Fort Sunfire, I broke into an Imperial base to find intel on a mole in Jabba's ranks. It should have been a straightforward job, but Bail sets off the alarm by killing a Zarek Besh agent, leaving me to blast my way out. Escaping on speeder bikes, we meet Hutt enforcers who aren't there. We're instead ambushed by a full platoon of Imperials when ND comes to rescue us. In Jabba's good graces, this ended the final main quest on Tatooine.
No, but...
Kay, Bib Fortuna just sent us a message.
On our way to find a slicer, ND5 starts to show signs of malfunctioning.
Today, X 3 9 4
Indeed.
D 5 7
Sending us back to Akiva in search of a part hidden in a droid factory under Mira City. As we navigated through this relic from the past, Zarek Besh agents ambushed us when we stumbled into Asara. The conversation understandably starts out hostile, but if we help them rescue one of their teams, they can help us repair ND. Freeing some rebels from a Hutt cartel outpost, we not only repaired ND, but also unintentionally recruited our heavy. Things got more complicated when Kay's estranged mother, Rico, joined the crew as our second slicer. Their rocky relationship added tension among the group, but with everything sorted on Akiva, it was time for the heist. With a stolen Lambda shuttle, Kay and Rico snuck aboard an ISB station to steal Sliro's master key. Getting through hordes of stormtroopers and ISB officers, we overheard a revealing conversation between Vale and Sliro, who was now decked out in full ISB gear. With a surprising appearance from Darth Vader, we learned that Sliro was the ISB director, adding a new layer of complexity to his character. Despite the stakes being raised, Kay managed to steal the master key, and the two of them escaped the ship unscathed.
Okay, let's go. For the rebellion, right?
Back on Canto Bight, the crew was finally assembled for what would be the biggest heist of their lives. With a tightly coordinated crew, we break into Sliro's mansion to nab the goods.
I have to thank you. I've never had a chance to claim my own death mark.
Come and get it.
After Vale predictably switches sides, she buys us time to make a run for it. After intense firefights with Zarek Besh agents, we fled Canto Bight. But inside the safe, there was no money.
Where's our haul?
Instead, it was a databank containing everything needed to aid the rebels. Jalen, however, had other plans. He intended to use it to take control of Zarek Besh for himself. The job quickly spiraled into a series of betrayals, leaving Kay as a prisoner on her own ship. With the tracker Kay has had since she was a kid, Ink and Kadik rescue her. Aboard the Star Destroyer, we pull off the classic Stormtrooper disguise to rescue ND from Jalen. What followed was a tense family reunion on the bridge where we discovered that Sliro and Jalen were brothers. However, with Zarek Besh now under Jalen's control, Sliro was killed out of revenge. During our attempt to save ND, things didn't go according to plan, leading to a high-stakes chase across the Star Destroyer. This was a nice change of pace gameplay-wise, as I had to hide from ND while I set up a trap for him. Luring him into it, we removed the restraining bolt where Jalen is killed in our final confrontation. In the final stretch, I used all the skills and abilities I've acquired throughout the game to mow through stormtroopers in an incredibly fun sequence. We aren't out of the clear just yet. With the Star Destroyer closing in on Akiva's rebel base, we help Asara send a message. In one of the story's few space sections, we fend off ties until we get help from the rebels and the Pikes, the faction I unintentionally ended up having the highest reputation with. After a fierce battle, we destroyed the Star Destroyer. The crew has one last drink on Canto Bight before everyone goes their separate ways, ending the story for Star Wars Outlaws. Now it's time to circle back and tackle the rest of this trophy list, starting with the side missions and contracts. The most common activity I encountered in Outlaws was intel chains, opportunities to acquire treasure, gear, or upgrades for Kay. I began my first one shortly after meeting Donka on Miragana, who provided intel on contacts who could upgrade my gear. After asking around, I found Sela Rovak outside of Janta's Hope, completing my first intel chain.
I'll take care of it and meet you back here.
Sela was one of many experts I ran into throughout Outlaws. As you explore the galaxy, you'll run into individuals who give you access to upgrades after completing a quest. These upgrades range from increased blaster damage, increased health, maneuvers for the Trailblazer, different abilities for Nix, and more. There are 9 experts spread across the 4 planets, so I took care of their quest shortly after I met them, with the last expert for me being a commando droid named MT7. Contracts also play a big role in the game. If you've played other open world games similar to Outlaws, this is going to be very familiar. Scattered across the planets are brokers who offer contracts for the different criminal factions. If you're on good terms with a faction, they'll have a dedicated broker with faction-specific contracts. I completed a few of these early on, but halfway through the story, I focused exclusively on them for a couple of hours. The objectives were pretty straightforward: steal from a rival faction, plant a device, steal data from the Empire, or deliver cargo in space. Nothing groundbreaking, and while they can feel repetitive after a while if you're trying to grind these out in one sitting, I never got bored doing these. Where things get interesting is with the end of these contracts. I can either fulfill the deal and boost my reputation, or double cross them for more credits and some reputation points for another faction. A neat idea, but more times than not, I just fulfilled my end of the bargain. As I was trying to increase my rep with each faction, I managed to complete a total of 40 contracts.
You are proving to be quite the asset for the Pikes.
Before getting into the syndicate, there's one set of side missions worth mentioning. For one trophy, I had to cheat and win a game of sabacc against Lando. While this sounds like more of a miscellaneous trophy, there are several side missions needed to 1. Unlock Lando as an expert, and 2. Play a game of sabacc with him. Surprisingly, the hard part wasn't the missions. It was learning how to play sabacc. Now, I'm not a huge fan of card games, whether that's in real life or in video games. More times than not, if I come across a card game in your video game, chances are I'm gonna pass on it. I dabbled with sabacc early on, but I was extremely confused. However, after tweaking the accessibility settings and taking some time to understand the rules, I actually started to enjoy sabacc. After playing a few games, this is honestly something I hope gets its own game, like Gwent from The Witcher. Once I started the sabacc questline, I struggled against opponents with some nasty ship tokens. I realized I needed to up my game, so I spent about half an hour hopping between planets, unlocking tokens that would give me an edge. By the time Lando's quest became available, I was confident enough to take him on. As for the cheating part, Nyx is probably the go-to method, but after unlocking some upgrades, I had other tricks too, like drawing 2 cards at once, or using a magnetic dice when certain cards were in my hand. With all the tricks I had up my sleeve, Lando didn't stand a chance, and it only took a couple of rounds to win the game.
All right, Lando. Time to pay up.
Congratulations, Kay, you earned it.
When it comes to the Underworld, the most important thing is reputation. As you encounter these factions during the story, you'll start with a neutral standing, but your actions, whether in main missions, contracts, or other activities, will impact your reputation. While this doesn't directly affect the story, it does influence gameplay depending on whether you're in a good or bad standing with a faction. I originally planned to max out my reputation with Crimson Dawn, but due to some story choices, this ended up going to the Ashiga clan.
Will you assist us in eradicating these pirates? You will be rewarded.
Despite starting out on good terms, Crimson Dawn was actually the faction I reached the lowest reputation with. Eventually, after completing enough contracts, I would get their reputation up to the max.
Job well done. Transferring credits now.
The same process was done for the Hutts,
You've exceeded my expectations.
and finally, the Pikes.
Eyes on target.
As I explored the galaxy, I picked up some miscellaneous trophies along the way, either naturally through story progression or during contract missions. I was racking up credits and materials to upgrade my blaster, and after completing the quest on Kijimi, I had enough parts to fully upgrade a blaster module configuration, which happened to be plasma. One of my favorite mechanics in Outlaws is how you unlock doors or slice terminals. Using my data spike on a locked door triggers a rhythm-based minigame that I quickly fell in love with. It just felt natural to me, and it's a mechanic I hope shows up in other Star Wars games. For a trophy, I had to pick 20 locks, which I knocked out early in the story.
Hold on a minute.
Hi there.
Slicing was another fun minigame that's pretty much a copy of Wordle, but instead of finding the right letters to form a word, you're looking for the correct sequence of symbols. It can get pretty advanced, but with a few upgrades, slicing terminals became much easier. I got 2 trophies after slicing 10 advanced terminals and slicing a total of 20 terminals. Back to the contracts. I ended up at a lot of Imperial bases, which is where the chaos can truly unfold. Similar to the game's bugs, another common complaint with Outlaws is the stealth, which I agree isn't very good.
Let me see.
More times than not, I went in guns blazing, so it wasn't long until the alarms went off. During these moments, I can shut off an alarm to get some of the heat off my back, but the first time I did this, I was very overstimulated with everything going on and happened to press R3 at a random terminal. A mechanic I didn't take full advantage of until later in the game was Adrenaline Rush, Outlaws' version of Red Dead's Deadeye. Initially, you can only target 3 enemies, but after doing a side quest for Sheriff Quint, I unlocked the ability to target up to 5 enemies.
Okay, not bad.
After completing the requirements for an upgrade, this increased it even further, allowing me to target 6 enemies simultaneously, which I did during one of the contracts. Fast Talk is another feature I underused. It allows you to distract enemies if you're caught during stealth sections, giving you a moment to stun them. The trophy requires you to use this 20 times, and if the stun shot didn't take so long to recharge, I probably would have knocked this out earlier, but it ended up being one of the last trophies I unlocked.
This is your
You have probably seen a lot of stormtroopers in the video, and they've got their own set of trophies. They're essentially the game's police, and if you kill them or trespass in restricted areas, you'll gain a wanted level. Much like GTA, as your wanted level rises, so does the intensity of the pursuit, eventually leading to a Death Trooper hit squad coming after you. There are multiple ways to clear my wanted status, and one of them includes completing their confrontation events. I tried this a few times when I was a bit underpowered, but after some upgrades, proper strategy, and the help of Nix, I got an officer's keycard to clear my wanted status. Another way to clear your wanted status is through corrupt Imperial officers at each of the planet's main cities. For another trophy, I had to bribe an officer to clear a wanted level 5, nothing higher or lower. After a few failed attempts, including one where I was arrested, I discovered a back route on Miragana where I found the officer and wiped my wanted level.
Target lost. Return to your positions.
With all the activities I'd been doing, I was constantly using my speeder and Trailblazer, both of which come with their own trophies. The speeder related ones were pretty straightforward. I got a trophy shortly after acquiring it when I performed a perfect landing.
More of those bandits?
Like a panther. Yes.
While on Akiva, I took a moment to do a 30-second power slide drift. Another trophy came later when I unlocked the ability to target 5 enemies with Adrenaline Rush. Once I unlocked it, I defeated 5 enemies at once on my speeder. Now onto the Trailblazer. Surprisingly, it doesn't get used that much during the story, so most of my time with it was during side stuff. While traveling felt fine, I wasn't initially sold on the combat. But like many aspects of the game, the more I played, the more it grew on me. One of the first trophies I snagged with the Trailblazer involved defeating an enemy ship without finishing it off with lasers or missiles. It was a bit tricky at first, but after some patience, I rammed into a TIE fighter for the trophy. After completing some tasks to unlock a loop maneuver, I defeated an enemy after doing one. When I found my way back to Kijimi, I went into the nebula outside the planet to defeat 10 enemies. I tried doing this with TIE fighters, but I think it specifically has to be pirates, as nothing happened when I defeated 10 TIE fighters. I also don't know if leaving the nebula restarts the counter. It was a tricky trophy, but nothing difficult. The next 2 trophies came near the end after fully upgrading the Trailblazer. After gathering enough parts and credits, I took to space with my fully upgraded ship. My goal was to destroy each Syndicate's capital ship without taking hull damage. I saw several strategies online, like ramming into the ships, but I just lowered the difficulty to easy and took on each of these ships when they spawn. Getting them to spawn is where the challenge comes from, making it the rarest trophy outside of the Platinum. Each capital ship has a set spawn point, so once you figure out how to get them to spawn, the rest is pretty straightforward. The first ship I destroyed was the Pikes near Tatooine, followed by Crimson Dawn on Toshara, and the Ashika clan on Kijimi, specifically in the Nebula. Finally, I returned to Tatooine for the Hutts. This is where I struggled, as getting their ship to spawn took forever. No matter what I was doing, I would either spawn the Pike capital ship or stumble into random pirate skirmishes. I watched multiple walkthroughs, but it was the path I followed in this video that worked for me, and I was finally able to take this ship down. But no trophy popped. I did get a little concerned, but luckily after taking down the Pike capital ship again, I finally got it. The last Trailblazer trophy involved defeating a raider to clear my wanted status. Similar to other wanted level trophies, I just had to create enough trouble in space until I reached the max wanted level when a Raider Star Destroyer dropped out of hyperspace. All I had to do was simply destroy it and my wanted level was cleared. Now we take it back on foot to explore what these different planets have to offer. One of Outlaws' best aspects is touching down on a planet and being able to go in any direction and create your own stories. The first planet where we get to stretch our legs is Toshara, a welcome addition to the Star Wars galaxy. As I landed on different planets throughout the course of the story, my curiosity led me to discover all areas on each planet. While the planets are expansive, most of the trophies happen in city locations, so I spent a lot of time going back and forth between Miragana, Mos Eisley, Mira, and Kijimi. Starting on Toshara and Dante's Hope, I encountered a criminal wallowing away at a bar. Based on the trophy description, I expected to be in for a long sob story, but it lasted for maybe 90 seconds max. A surprise I really enjoyed was coming across a couple of arcade games. One is a rail shooter, while the other is similar to an endless runner. I played them both, and during one of my many trips to Tatooine, I was determined to get the high score for the rail shooter, which took me roughly 10 minutes.
That's right.
While Star Wars seems to be afraid of bringing back pod racing for some reason, Outlaws offers 5th tier races to bet on. I tried my hand at this a couple of times, but after doing a side quest that gave me a hint on who to bet on, I put all my money on Jedi, who actually won.
How lucky is that?
I also did a lot of shopping for gear and materials. Vendors are abundant in Outlaws, but some are loyal to certain factions. As long as you have a good standing with them, you can buy from their stock at a discount, which I did from a Hutt smuggler. Another place to spend credits is at street food vendors on each planet, which came with a fun minigame. In the beginning, I thought this was kind of odd, but after doing one of these, I found it to be pretty cute.
There we go. Okay, buddy.
It is essentially a series of quick-time events, but seeing Kay and Nix enjoying their company over some food was a nice break from all the action and exploring. After completing these, I had my boy Nix pickpocket someone in a cantina on each planet. Speaking of Nix, this little guy also comes with a few trophies. One neat thing he can do in combat is fetch items like thermal detonators or blaster rifles, which I took advantage of when I felt overwhelmed. Over the course of the game, I had him do this a lot when I defeated 20 enemies with these fetched items. Another one of Nix's abilities is blinding enemies, which I had to do 30 times. I wasn't getting a trophy after a while, which is when I found out I had to let his entire animation play out for it to count. I did this maybe a handful of times before grinding this out at an Imperial base. Lastly, Nix can also lead you to a set of 15 collectibles. At certain points while exploring, he'll signal a point of interest. Following him will eventually lead to some treasure, along with a wonderful view of the planet. I found 3 of these naturally and used a guide to find the remaining 12. This brings us to the final part of my platinum journey, collectibles. Well, kinda. Only one trophy here is really tied to collectibles. The other is a series of quests that lead me to a set of gear for Kay. Jet Cordo's Legacy is a quest that became available early on and is essentially a treasure hunt throughout the galaxy. Starting on Toshara, this led me down a path where I got pieces for the Scoundrel gear set. It was a nice change from the other side quests, and while only half of them need to be completed to get the set,
Hey, NB, I picked up some gear from this wall.
I did see this quest out to the end since I was already invested. This last trophy is what halted many trophy hunters, myself included, for days. Just like the previous one, Old School Cool requires me to acquire the Disruptor gear set. After meeting one of the experts, MT7, a quest kicks off where I have to track down 16 CIS transmissions. They were scattered in space and fairly easy to get, except for Miranda's Mistake 2 on Kajimi. Due to some bug, players, at least on PS5, couldn't open this container, making the quest and the platinum unattainable for nearly 2 weeks. Luckily for me, I wrapped up everything on September 8th, so I only had to wait a couple days before patch 1.1.2 dropped on September 10th, fixing the issue. Once it was patched, I collected the last transmission, raced to the surface, and found the chest containing the disruptor gear sets.
Oh, weird. There's some
Giving me that platinum for Star Wars Outlaws.
It looks like an ion amplifier or something.
That would certainly explain why the Separatists wanted it locked away. You should try it out.
After spending 31 hours getting the platinum, I have to say, I had a pretty fun time with Outlaws. Now I know that's going to draw in a vocal crowd that thinks I'm being paid by Ubisoft, which I'm not, or that I'm a Disney shill, which I'm not, but I've made it clear in past videos that I was hyped for Outlaws since day one. That being said, when the reviews started coming in and I finally got my hands on the game, I did have some buyer's remorse. Those first few hours just weren't hitting for me, and all the issues that seemed to plague its launch didn't leave me with much confidence moving forward. The bug I experienced at the beginning was almost my breaking point. But I stuck it out, and once the story picked up, I explored more planets and got some upgrades. I found myself genuinely enjoying the experience. The story, while nothing crazy, was a fun romp set during a time we don't see a lot of in Star Wars canon. But the real standout for me was the stories I created in the open world. Whether it was stumbling upon a great dragon while treasure hunting, fighting off pirates in Kajimi's Nebula, dominating a game of Sabacc, or uncovering Toshara's many secrets with Nix, once I hit my stride, I could not put the game down. I also found the trophy list to be solid. Aside from the bug trophy I mentioned, everything else was easy and enjoyable to unlock. Like any good trophy list, it encouraged me to fully engage with all the game's systems and experience everything it has. Outlaws might not be the perfect game, sure, but it's far from the trash fire many in the community are making it out to be. At the end of the day, I'm glad I stuck with this game and look forward to any future updates and hopefully a sequel someday. That's all for the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Star Wars Outlaws? This is easily one of the most divisive games I've seen get released in a while, so if you've played it, platinumed it, or dropped it, I want to hear it all. Just make sure to be respectful of any and everyone's opinions in the comments. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. May the Force be with you.